After a successful decade run as a featured documentary, Eyes of the Mothman is now a podcast containing bonus information and, for the first time ever, the complete, unedited field interview tapes with eyewitnesses, experts, and those who were directly impacted by the Mothman incidents that occurred in Point Pleasant, West Virginia in 1966 and 1967. Although this podcast is meant to act as a historical record and an archive of the events that transpired, all material contained here is not for reproduction without the written consent by the copyright holder, Redline Studios, Incorporated. Episode 15 of Eyes of the Mothman, the podcast, brings us to what I can honestly say is probably my favorite interview of the entire film, and what I think is the most important interview that we did. For people that are really interested in the Mothman subject and are really into this, I think this is the most important interview that we secured. And I know for me, as someone who was, kind of obsessed with this story when I had found it, I just thought this was the most important interview that we did. I didn't know at the time, but looking back after, later, I do think that this was probably like the best interview that we did in terms of talking to someone who witnessed the Mothman, lived it, experienced it, had a very prominent role in the original John Keel book. By the time we made this film, a lot of the people that were in that book were either gone or just, too difficult to find or not able to track down. And so Merle Partridge was a Mothman eyewitness. He was one of the first witnesses. He plays a huge role in the storytelling of John Keel's book. He's kind of the guy who lives out in the farmhouse, and one night is experiencing electronic issues in his home. His lights are going on and off. The TV stops working. There's a disturbance outside his home. He goes outside, has an experience where he witnesses pretty much an unidentified flying object in his yard. And then his dog, Bandit, which kind of becomes this famous animal icon in the storytelling of Mothman, goes missing and then is found dead days later in another part of town, becomes a really important story in the unfolding of Mothman. And if you guys remember, Merle has an experience outside of his house one night. The electronics in his house stop working. The TV goes on the fritz. He goes outside. There's a kind of a UFO sighting. He sees lights in his backyard that he can't identify, and he doesn't see the Mothman, but his dog goes out after the lights, disappears, and then days later the dog is found dead on the side of a road miles away from his home, where other Mothman sightings would happen around the same time. So of course, people, again, we look at this as like a detective story. People started to try to piece things together back then. You're like, okay, this guy has an experience. His dog goes missing. Now the dog is found, miles up the road, dead. People see a Mothman creature, in the same vicinity, and they start to kind of connect these things. And Merle, whether he likes it or not, becomes, a staple of the Mothman story. And so it doesn't come across in the film, but in the back of my mind, I'm always trying to find reasons to go like, oh, it's not real, or like it's made up. But then you interview people like Merle, and it has the opposite effect. I know it just made me really start to believe that whatever these people experienced was something credible and tangible. I can't say what it was, but I know that they weren't lying. And I think that there are things about Merle that came out in our interview that were not in the John Keel book, which really surprised me that shreds of important information were not in that book, but that I think we got in our interview. One thing that kind of does not get enough acknowledgement is that Merle was retired Air Force, right? So when someone in the Air Force tells you, I saw a bunch of weird lights outside my house and I can't identify it as something terrestrial, or, he had another story that didn't even make the John Keel book that I thought was more fascinating than even his Mothman sighting, which was this at night, orbs of light thing. But he told another story how he was out in his pool with his family and saw a massive craft go over his house in the daylight, where he saw like the vents and the metal and like the structure of it. I don't know if you guys remember that, but that was just another story that he told of like, no, we saw this thing. And he wasn't trying to convince us. It's like, believe me. It was just very matter of fact, like, yeah, this happened. I saw this. And I liked him a lot. I believed him. I thought he was credible. I just feel like, you get a gut feeling when you talk to someone if they're lying or being sensational, or maybe they're not on it and they remember facts. And I just, his story never changed, on camera, off camera, on the phone. He had the same retelling of the things that happened to him in such a matter-of-fact way, almost in a military way. It was just very black and white and very just kind of rudimentary the way he described it, even though he was talking about fantastical things. I
just really liked him. I remember I liked him. His wife was there. They were just like really nice.
Well, his wife wasn't there at first. So do you remember? Because his wife, at first,
she didn't. Yeah, she did not want him.
He was a little hesitant to do the interview. He did not say yes right away. And it was because he's like, my wife does not want me speaking to any more media people, because back then he was ridiculed and made fun of and kind of targeted, by people kind of just teasing him and razzing him about what he had said he had witnessed. And I just remember he's like, all right, my wife's going to be gone from like noon to 2. She's like, so that's your window to come interview me. And of course we went long, and I just remember that car coming up the lane, and he's still there. It might even be in the shot. I don't remember. It might have been when the cameras went wrong. But he's like, oh, she's coming back. And it's like, I see it coming with the dust. I'm like, oh shit. I was expecting that, we're going to get a combative person, but she was actually incredibly nice. And I think we've talked about this before. A lot of these people, initially did not want us interviewing them because they thought we were going to go out there. We're going to be, city slicker people who are going to, tease them or make fun of them. And it's going to be like a National Enquirer type thing. But once we got to know people, she was very welcoming. She welcomed us into her home, and actually turned out to be a really, really nice person. And I remember their little dog. Do you remember their dog?
I do, yeah.
Do you remember the dog's name? Little Bit.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember, I'm like, well, that's an interesting name. He goes, well, she's just a little bit, ain't she? And I'm like, yes, she is.
No, I mean, that's what I remember most about talking to him about the story about how his dog got taken away. That was the biggest part. And I just also remember that, yeah, sure, he was recorded and talked to by some other people, but it just shows you how important it is to go in front of the person, because you said you were learning things about him, and he was telling stories that you never read about, were never reported, things like that. And that's what gives you, like, once you actually go in front of the person, it's one thing to find out information for an article or for a story or something like that, and you call them on the phone or you read someone else's reports and gather, an information. It's another thing when you're sitting right in front of the person and you can talk directly to them, because it was like something similar. We were talking to another guy who worked for the military, might have even been the Air Force, for another thing about aliens. And he was on CNN because he had witnessed this stuff in the sky that he couldn't recognize. It was a UFO. And on CNN, they interviewed him like he was just some guy, some witness. But when we talked to him, when we got the camera in front of him, he's telling us that his job for 14 years in the United States Air Force on an aircraft carrier was to identify with his naked eye the light patterns of military and commercial airplanes. He said there wasn't anybody better that could do it, about the way the colors, the pattern, the blinking pattern. He said, I could tell you any plane, any make, anyone in the air, I could tell you what it was. I was really good at it. And when I saw this thing, I had never seen anything of the likes of it before. Now, they never said that on CNN. We were the only ones, because we were right in front of them, and they said they never asked me about my history or why I'd be able to recognize or not recognize something in the sky. But he wasn't looking for money. He wasn't looking for fame. He wasn't looking for anything. He just was trying to tell you, I never saw anything like this before in my life. And that's what this guy was like. It's the same idea. Like, he started to unravel stuff and to reveal stuff to us that was never reported before. And he starts telling us stories, and we're like, oh, this is exclusive.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, you look at, I think a lot of people are quick to go, oh, these people back then, and even now, when they tell these type of stories, they're looking for their 5 minutes of fame, or they think they're going to get something out of this. But when you sit and talk to him, the reason why he didn't want us to interview him was that he got a ton of ridicule back then. And that wasn't in the book either, that, he was being harassed. People were making fun of him. It's not the easiest thing to come out. It's like almost like being a whistleblower. Like, a lot of people don't do it because you fear the negative backlash. And I do remember, his wife was saying that people would call them. They got their number out of the phone book and they would call them and just constantly go, "You're crazy. You're a cuckoo." And remember, I distinctly remember her saying that, right? And, it drove them nuts. So they didn't get anything out of this, that's the other thing. People go, "Oh, they're in John Keel's book." I'm going to go ahead and guess they were not compensated for that at all. They're just, it's like a journalist taking notes and stories. Now, one thing that I'll say, and like this is going to upset, diehard Mothman fans, but interviewing Merle, also something happened where, in the John Keel book, his name isn't Merle.
I was just about to bring that up. What was this? Yeah.
It was Newell. And so like you start to go, okay, now people respect John Keel as an investigative reporter type author. But I remember, in doing this, I'm a very thorough person. And I remember just thinking, how do you screw that up? How do you get someone's name wrong? And then it bothered me as someone who's trying to approach this as an investigative person as well, because I start going, well, if you messed up his name, what else did you mess up? You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to say he was a hack or anything, because he had a very good reputation as an author and an investigative journalist type person. But it did bother me that like you got the guy's name wrong. And it's funny. I know exactly when it was playing out. I feel strongly that I know exactly how this happened, because now if you think about it, we're from New York. John Keel is from New York. We speak very differently here. The accents down there are very strong. So when you talk to Merle talks like this. He got a high-pitched voice. Yeah, my name's Merle. It kind of sound like Newell. Could sound like anything.
Sure.
But whereas I have no shame, I'd be like, what? Sorry, what's your name? Spell it. Spell it again. Like, I've learned to not have any shame when you go to interview somebody or talk to them because you're trying to get it right.
I don't think he even said it until we got there. Even on the preliminary phone interview, he didn't tell you his name was Merle, because when you found out his name was Merle, that's when I found out, and we were there like at his house, and he's like, "That's not my name, by the way.
Yeah,
my name's Merle." And I just remember being like, "What?"
Yeah, well, that's the thing is, people who don't know in production, when you're doing interviews, one of the first things you do when you roll the camera before you say action, before you start asking real questions is, can you state and spell your name, and what title would you like? And so you have it on tape. You have them spelling their own name. Yeah. And so you always have reference for that. And because you're expecting to put their name and titles in the bottom, so you want to get it right. And yeah, it would bother me too, but I can't tell you how many times I've told people that my name is Neil, and they're like, they hear it as Leo.
Leo?
What?
What's your name?
That's
Neil.
odd.
Leo. Like, and it happens
with
a lot of Irish people.
What I think is weird is whenever I introduce myself, and I distinctly will say, "Hi, I'm Matt," and it always gets turned into Mike. Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Which I think is weird because that's my dad's name.
Well, they just don't care. That's the thing. But they hear me wrong, and I remember it's Irish, and I remember listening to somebody who I met from Ireland who was from my grandmother's hometown, and his name was Francis, and I said, "What's your last name?" And he said, and I said, "What?" I had to pretend like I was deaf.
Yeah.
Like, what? I'm sorry. And he said it 3 or 4 times, to the point where I got embarrassed to ask him, because I didn't want to embarrass him, that your accent is so thick that I can't get it. And that might have been what happened.
That's what I think is what happened. Yeah, I think that he was...
I can't ask again.
I imagine it was probably some type of a social thing. And I do think it's a regional thing because, like, I know there was a time we were out in Kentucky and I was with Anastasia and we went up to order food. And like, I feel like, I don't know if it's just because I've been out there back and forth, but I got to be pretty good at like deciphering, like, I'll hear it and go, I didn't get that.
You have to
but
translate,
then I can process it and go, oh, that's what he said. And I remember we were at a venue and we went up to get some food.
We were fixing to get some food. And so we went up and ordered, and it's like a hot dog joint. And I remember the lady behind the counter was like, "You want slaw?"
And she's like, do you want slaw? Like, do you want coleslaw on that thing? And I just watched her look at the person, and her face was just like it was like when a dog hears a noise and doesn't know what it is. And it was more rude to the woman behind the counter because she just gave her the look of like, that's the dumbest sound I've ever heard. And I had to like stop, like take a bullet. I was like, she wants to know if you want slaw. That's I'm like, you're gonna get us fucking killed out here. Like so rude. I remember in slow motion because you were so rude.
Hoping to read her lips. I was like literally like staring at her mouth, and I didn't know. And I grew up with parents who have thick accents, but they're European. It's not like middle of America, South accent type of deal. Yeah. So like,
I just remember those
accents are much harder for me to decipher than like European accents.
You looked at her like she was an extraterrestrial who had just landed on Earth, and I'm like, no.
Well, it's a weird kind of societal thing. Like, I'm embarrassed to ask what you just said 3 times in a row because I don't want you to feel embarrassed because I'm kind of making fun of the way you talk. I remember I was
as if there's something wrong with you.
Right. I was in Dublin one time in a pipe shop, and I was with somebody who was Irish, and I was just browsing, and the guy goes, "Do you want a brochure?"
A brochure?
Do you want a brochure? I didn't understand a word he said. Do you want a brochure? And I had to wait. She actually interrupted. She's like, no, he's okay. And he looked at me like, what's wrong with you? And I didn't want to embarrass the guy, so I had to wait until we got out on the sidewalk. I'm like, what did he say? What did he say? Yeah. I don't know. But it's the whole thing of you don't want them to feel, especially because they're giving you the interview. They're already offering something to you. So you want to cater to them. Do you need water? Do you need coffee? It's not going to take too long. Is it too hot? Do you want us to get you some? You try to cater to them so that they're comfortable in what they're saying, and you appreciate the fact that they're doing all of this for you. This wouldn't be happening unless you asked something of them.
It's a really interesting thing. And it's also like, when you move, let's say down to the South, and then you start to talk like them, people go, oh, you're starting to talk like them now. And I think it's born out of like, you're just trying to not be rude. Like you don't want to be like, oh, there's the guy who's not from here. You want to fit in. People naturally want to fit into wherever they go. And so it is a really interesting thing. We've traveled to a lot of parts of the country with very distinctive accents, and I've always found it interesting. But I definitely it was a small little thing, and I've never really talked about it, but it did always bother me from like a John Keel standpoint. I'm like, how did you get that wrong? I'm supposed to believe your story about the UFO now, and you got the guy's name wrong.
Yeah.
But for me, it was more about this person and this subject. And again, with Merle himself, sitting down, talking with him, you get a little glimpse of like who somebody is. And, he was I thought it was a very genuine person, just invited us into his home, was very comfortable around us, even though we were strangers, and was very comfortable telling us his story. As
far as eyewitnesses go, I think that Merle's description of everything that happened, I think his was definitely the most believable, I would say. Not that I didn't believe the other witnesses, but I think he seemed the most credible. Like his story was like on point, where I was like, okay, this definitely happened to him. Like whether it's real or not, he absolutely 100% believes that he saw these things, and I believe that he saw these things.
Yeah, and his military background only lends credence to his story too, because again, to misidentify something aerial, to someone who's a common person is different than someone who was in the Air Force. He was not only in the military, but he was in the Air Force. Yeah. So I just thought he was a fantastic interview. I enjoyed it, and I'm going to really enjoy revisiting it now, and hopefully you'd enjoy it as well.
A lot of people's got me as Merle N. or Merle Newell. Newell was a hell of a name. I don't know where they ever come up with that at. That's the way it happened.
Well, see, like when people call and they ask for Newell, and it's like for taxes or bills, you say it's not me. But if someone calls and it's lottery, then it's you.
Sure.
Got to use it for the good stuff. So I'll just tell you a couple of things before we start. I'm just going to ask you general questions If you don't know the answer to them, just let me know and we could skip it. Or if it's something that doesn't make sense or I might have gotten it wrong, just tell me, and we'll fix it. When I ask you a question later on, when I use this on the video, my question is not going to be there. So if you can like restate my question in your answer, that helps. Like if I say, what's your dog's name? And your answer is Little Bit. Later on, that's all I'll have, so no one will know what you're talking about. But if you say like my dog's name is Little Bit, then I'll know that you're talking about your dog. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And I might ask you the same question more than once. It's just to kind of get different answers, things like that. Okay? Yeah, sure. Is that like your wife? That's a wide just do that? You can go a little wider. I was just curious. Can you show me like the wide and the tight? That was pretty nice. You look good on camera. Do you want to wear your sunglasses, or are you comfortable without them, or without?
I was kind of hard without them.
Yeah.
That bright sun.
Is it too bright for
I
you?
have to squint up pretty bad.
All right. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, are we ready? Okay. First, so we don't pull a Gray Barker. Give me your name and spell it for me, so I make sure we get it right.
The name is Merle, Merle. Partridge, Partridge.
Great. How long have you lived in West Virginia?
Life.
Yeah, you grew up here?
Outside of leaving here for a year or so to go to California, to go to Texas, or we moved around a lot when we was first married.
Okay. So my first question is for you. You had your own personal kind of sighting or experience with what people called the Mothman. I'm talking about the incident with the television in the barn. Can you tell me, in many details as you can remember, just tell me what happened to you that night?
Well, that night, as well as I can remember, it's been a long time ago. We were sitting watching television, my wife, I, the children. And the only thing I can remember what was on was a show, a movie, that had a dog in it by the name of Monsieur Cognac. So it was a French poodle. And all at once the TV started winding up in a high-pitched whine like the old Army generator used to hand crank. And I thought, what in the world's going on here? All at once the whole TV just exploded. Glass blew out of it and all over the floor. And I didn't know what was going on. About the same time, that dog I had, a German Shepherd, started letting out these long wolf howls, like death howls, I call them, or whatever. And he was out on the porch. Well, my first impulse is there's something going on screwy around here, so I usually kept my 8mm Mauser sitting right close to the door there. I just picked it up and walked out on the porch. And the dog took off down across the field towards the little barn that we had down there. And as I looked down that way, I could see red lights intermittently coming on and off and on and off. Something like aircraft lights, but a lot more of them. And I hollered for Bandit to come back, and he didn't mind me. He went down there and around, carrying on. And I'm just standing there kind of flabbergasted as what in the world's going on. And all at once, it was just gone. And so was the dog. He shut up, but he wasn't around to be found anywhere. So we didn't pay much attention more to it. My wife swept a glass up out of the floor from the TV set. And we went to bed, and next morning we got up. I called a friend of mine that lived over at Wallace. He worked for me for a while, and started explaining to him about what happened. And he said, well, you're not going to believe this, but he said, the same thing happened to my TV last night. I said, we're crying out loud. He said, I'm coming over to see you. So he was there in about 15 minutes. And I said, well, let's go hunting and see what we can see, see what we can find. So we went down in the field there where I'd seen this going on. And there was a huge circle, maybe 30 foot in diameter there. This was a meadow with grass in it. The grass all just smashed down like you took a big donut and, under pressure and pushed down on it. And as well, you know, I don't know what to think. You need to know. I don't either. So we went through the woods looking, and all at once he says, "Hey, there's something hanging in that tree over there." And I looked, and there's some kind of a black thing hanging in the tree. And I thought, good Lord, is that maybe something to do with what happened last night? And we kind of edged around there, and I looked and I started laughing. It was a squirrel feeder somebody had made out of a tire. I don't know how it ever got there, but that's what it was.
The red lights that you saw outside in the barn. Can you just describe for me a little bit what it looked like? Where was it in the sky? Was it?
No, it was on the ground. It was on the ground. They were intermittent. It gave the appearance of going around, but there was more of a series of flashes moving than it was. It wasn't aircraft. I spent 3 years in the Air Force. I was around quite a few aircraft. I know it wasn't aircraft. It was just intermittent red lights. And
Was it in the barn?
no, on the ground. Yeah, this is a big meadow with a little barn in the middle of it. There was a pump house and storage and stuff like that.
So that's pretty much the weirdest. Is that what you say? Like the strangest thing that you saw in terms of what people call the Mothman and things like that? You never actually saw that.
I never saw anything like that.
Okay.
Now, the one weirdest thing about the whole episode was for a week after that, you could not hear any wildlife at all. There were no birds chirping, no crickets chirping. A cow didn't even move. You didn't hear nothing. It was absolute silence. It's just like everything had died. And if you want me to continue, I can tell you about this. What happened about 2 or 3 days later. I'm not sure of how many days later it was. My wife, myself, 2 girls, 2 oldest boys, I believe, were all out on swimming. I had a big swimming pool there, and a big deck around it. We were all laying on the deck, just shooting the breeze, you know, looking at the sun. And all at once, the whole sky just blacked out over top of us. I can't even describe it except to say that it was humongous. You didn't see anything else but that. It was some kind of a mechanical thing. Just a big thing is all I could say.
Did it have working parts, engine, something like that?
I don't know. There was no noise. Nothing like that. It just all at once it was there. It covered the whole sky, just like you're laying here looking up the sky. And I don't mean looking like this and like that, but just looking straight up. You didn't see anything but that machine. And it was, I hate to bring up the subject of a television show later years, but the Battlestar Galactica, it was similar in appearance to something like that. It was a dull gray finish on it. It had a lot of portholes in it, a lot of rivets I could see. What else can I say?
This was during the day?
During the day. Oh, yeah. Sun was bright. We were out swimming and laying on the deck, and not only me saw it, but my kids all seen it too. Kept, what is it, Dad? What is it? Your guess is as good as mine.
When it left, do you remember how it left?
Just all at once it was gone. It just appeared. It was just like it came out of another dimension or something. It was there, and then it wasn't.
Weird.
And about 3 days after that, approximately, we were sitting in and watching television. I had bought a new TV, of course. And all at once, a guy hit my front porch, pounding on the door, and said, "I need help." Well, I'm really spooked by now, you know, of anything that's going on. So my response was him to, "Who is it?" You know, he said, "I need help." I said, "You're going to need a lot of help in about a minute, because I'm fixing to blow that door overhead you." He said, "No, master, I'm serious. I need help." And I eased over there and opened the door, and the guy was on the porch, and he had a little kid with him. And he said, I got 2 boys. And he said, something took off so fast up here beside my car. It wrecked me into the ditch, and I can't find my other kid. Well, I said, hell, come on, let's get in my Jeep and go look for him. So I got in my Jeep and went up the road and looked all around up there, and we started back down the other way. And here come his boy walking towards us, which meant he would have to go clear around the top of a mountain there to get on that road to come back in the direction he was coming. And I said, what happened? He said, I was coming down the hill back there. He says, there was something took off beside of me, red lights are flashing and carrying on. And he said, no noise or nothing, it just scared me half dead, and I wrecked in the ditch. Well, here about 3 or 4 years ago, I bought a refrigerator from Western Auto, and the guy delivered it. And he said, you don't remember me, do you? I said, no. He said, I'm the kid that was lost that night up there at your farm in Doddridge County.
The kid that went and lost it, he was going to change the tape real quick. Okay?
Well, there are two involved.
Somebody know whenever we're ready.
But anyway, I asked this guy when he brought the fridge out to us, I said, you were what, about 11, 12 years old? He said, yeah, I was 12 years old. I said, well, what happened? He says, I don't know. He says, I got knocked out or something. I don't remember anything after Dad wrecked the truck.
That's weird.
So.
You remember, you were living in, were you living in West Virginia during like 66 and 67 when a lot of the weird stuff was going on?
Yeah.
Point Pleasant?
I was living up in Doddridge County. You see, the day after this happened with this thing, my dog disappearing, was when the state trooper at Point Pleasant seen what he described as a large bird standing alongside the road holding the carcass of a large dog. I've always have said that was my dog. But I don't think it was a bird he seen. I think he seen a spaceman with tanks on him and hoses. But that's speculation. I didn't see it.
Can you tell me about that again? What the day after your dog goes missing and you saw the red lights. Tell me about that. The day after. What's reported?
Just that we went looking for maybe some clues of what we seen that night. And it was on the news about the state trooper seeing this thing along the road holding the carcass of a large dog.
You think that probably was your dog that went missing?
I definitely think it was. That dog of mine was pretty well trained. If I told him to come, he'd come. He wouldn't keep on going like that.
You remember what was described as the thing that had your dog on the day after? Do you know what people were saying it looked like?
A large bird.
Hold on.
When the
1 second. Sorry about that. I'll ask you again. Start again. Can you tell me what people describe the next day was with your bird, and can you start your sentence with the next day people reported this?
Next day, a state trooper reported that he had seen a bird standing along the highway, Route 2, with the carcass of a large dog holding it. And the only thing I can do is voice my own opinion. I think it was my dog. I had the investigators that came out to the house there and started going over this stuff with us and kind of trying to make fools I was more than anything else, telling me it was a large crane. Well, if that crane could have picked that dog up, that crane would have been minus a couple of legs. Cranes don't pick up no 100-pound dogs.
So in your opinion, a lot of people have argued that, what was seen out there with a crane. So, but in your opinion, there's no way that could be.
No. Besides that, what kind of a crane can maze down a 30-foot circle of grass like that?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. You remember when people were starting to report sightings of the Mothman living in West Virginia? Do you remember when that was happening? And if you remember, can you just tell me what type of things were people saying? What were they reporting? What did this thing look like?
I didn't pay much attention to it after that. We moved to Florida, we moved to Florida about 1970, 71, around in there somewhere. So I couldn't tell you much about after that.
Can you tell me, the night that you went outside, the TV kind of exploded, you went and saw these weird red lights and your dog went missing. Can you tell me what type of emotions were you feeling? Were you scared? Were you just kind of didn't know what was going on? What did it feel like? Do you remember?
Well, it varied from curiosity to being scared. I mean, this happening late at night, it's kind of spooky. And you get jumpy in a hurry. But the weirdest thing, I go back and say again, the weirdest thing was the silence. And that kind of spooked you too.
Then the TV exploding, that must have kind of been a shock, right? Because TV's usually...
Well, you don't tie that in with anything happening out of the ordinary. Maybe the TV blowed up or something, but that's possible. If it hadn't been for the going-ons outside, the dog are howling and carrying on, and me going out on the porch and seeing those lights down there, I would have thought nothing of it. Other than I got a lousy TV.
When you saw the red lights, do you remember how you reacted to that? How did you feel then? Was that scary? What were you?
Oh, like I said, I had my gun with me, and I hesitated there. I thought, I'm going to take a shot at that thing. And I thought, oh, Lord, I better not. There might be somebody in it or something, for all I know. So I didn't do anything to it. It was gone.
But obviously, I mean, the event that night was kind of it was serious enough that you felt you to go outside with your gun, I guess, right?
Oh yeah, we didn't get any sleep that night.
Do you in terms of like Mothman type questions? I have some general questions about that, but can I ask you any questions about that, or does that not really fit with?
Mothman thing don't fit in. The only thing that fits in is the time structure. When this bird was reported holding the carcass of a large dog was the same day or the day before the people started seeing the Mothman thing down there.
A lot of people have argued like that the Mothman's been a demon, that it was an angel, that it was a mutated bird. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I have quite an opinion. I don't believe in none of that garbage.
Where do you think all this came from? This whole Mothman thing. What's your take on it?
I'm not going, after seeing what I see and the way people react to me, I'm not going to tell somebody else they're stupid if that's what they've seen. I might have a little trouble believing them, but if that's what they've seen, well, I'll leave it at that. Because the investigators that come out to my house, I didn't call them. I don't know who sent them out. But they tried to make my wife, she's not here today? You know why she's not here?
Because of us.
Uh-huh. She said, nobody will ever make a fool out of me again.
What did they do? They tried to put words in?
I'll stand out here and point down where you seen this. Where you seen this spaceship? And I remember what she told them. Y'all can go to hell and get out of here. Get off my place.
Yeah, I can understand that. Well, I'll definitely try. I promise I'm not going to do that.
For 6 months after that, my phone rings 100 times a day. And all you'd hear is cuckoo, cuckoo.
So people kind of, I guess maybe reacted poorly to that. That's not fair. I promise I'm not going to do that.
I don't call any man a liar if it's something he says he's seen.
Yeah.
He could have very well seen it, and somebody saying beside him might not have seen the same thing.
Do you remember what people were saying about the eyes of the people? What people thought, was the Mothman? Do you remember what they were reporting about what his eyes were like, or things like that? Just being a resident in West Virginia during that time.
No, I don't really.
This podcast is a companion piece to the original feature-length documentary film from 2011 of the same title. If you're enjoying this podcast, we encourage you to see the film that started it all by visiting www.eyesofthemothman.com.
Talking about just back to the day after with the bird in relation to your dog. There were all these professors at universities that were kind of blaming a sandhill crane, specifically for what, with your dog incident. Can you just tell me a little bit about that? I mean, I know living in West Virginia, you're quite familiar with the wildlife here. Can you just tell me from your perspective, that how that doesn't make sense, of it being a crane like that? Because apparently...
I can tell you this, but my dog, he killed everything that moved in wild animals. Everything from groundhogs to foxes, anything you get his chomps in. If it had been something down there in the way of wildlife, he'd brought back a piece of it.
Right. but instead he went missing and never came
Right.
back. Can you just tell me that part of it too? That tell me the night of it happening, how your dog went out, kind of went missing, never came back.
Well, he took off charging down towards that light circle. And I hollered, "Come back, Bandit." And he just kept right on going down and around and around. I could hear him going around and barking and carrying on. And then all at once, he just shut up and he was gone. Well, I didn't pay too much attention. I mean, as far as I knew, he might be out in the woods hunting or something. But the next day, I paid attention.
He never came back, right?
Yeah, incidentally, there's one thing I didn't mention is that when we went down the next morning to look at where this was at, there was just a whole series of dog prints all around that circle. Like he had been running around, whatever it was going around.
And you said the lights that you saw, they were red. Is that right?
Yeah, strictly red, bright red.
Can you tell me that? So you started with, the lights I saw were...
The lights I saw were bright red. They weren't glistening deer eyes or anything like that. I've seen many a deer at night, and I've seen many other animals their eyes light up. But these were big. From what I could tell, the size of a car headlight in diameter, the lights, but a whole series of them. And I don't think they were moving. I think they were intermittently giving you the impression they were moving.
And I kind of want to set the record straight with you, because a lot of times people have, automatically said, "Oh, you saw the Mothman." So can you just tell me, as far as I know, I did not see the Mothman. What I saw were red lights.
Basically, that's true. What I seen was not a Mothman or anything resembling a Mothman. What I seen was mechanical. Or I assume it was mechanical because you can almost tell the difference between something that's mechanical and something that is a living thing.
Can you tell me a little bit about after your sighting? I know there was like a lot of things that were going on in West Virginia at that time, in terms of weird events. Did the incident that happened to your television, to your dog, and the lights there, did that change your life at all? Did anything change after that incident?
It didn't change our life any. No, we got tired of hearing the phone ring all the time. Finally started cussing a few people out, and it quit.
Can you tell me a little bit about that? After you had reported your sighting that you had been, tell me about, if you don't mind, some of those unfortunate things that came with it. A lot of people were calling you, bothering you, and even people misreporting what you had said.
Oh yeah, I had a lot of calls. People said, "Well, we seen your dog," but I'd say, "Okay, describe him to me," but they never did.
So you kind of got kind of bombarded with phone calls and reporters, I think.
Go lay down. Go.
Come here. Just helping out. Your agent, in case anything goes wrong, he steps in. Can you just tell me a little bit about that? Maybe that is maybe something that was different in your life afterwards. Was that for whatever it was a few months, a year after you report what happened to you, you get all of these kind of annoying phone calls and reporters and people. Just tell me a little bit about that.
Well, there isn't much to tell, really. Like I said, the phone ring, people say cuckoo, and just ordinary, well, not ordinary, but just basically phone calls, people making fun of you, ridiculing you.
And after that, did you kind of regret reporting what you had saw? Did it make you think twice?
No, not really. I made more of a joke out of it than anything else. People say, "Hell, did you seen your spaceship lately?" And I said, "Hell yeah, he was back last night." You might as well go along with it.
Yeah, you can't take it too serious,
It was really spooky, though. The silence is what was the spooky thing. That's something that took some doing. Something, you make all this wildlife shut up. A certain time of year, which is when this happened, you could hear crickets and everything else going on. All kinds of birds.
Do you have an opinion on what you thought it was that was outside in your field that day? The red lights after all this time? Have you?
Well, I think it was a space vehicle.
Can you tell me that again? I think
I think it was a space vehicle I saw.
You remember what? What was this? 1966?
I believe it was. I'm not even sure of the date anymore.
That's fine. Can you just tell me the same thing that, I think what I saw that night was a space vehicle, and then tell me why?
I think what I saw that night was some type of space vehicle. Now, that was that night. That's when we were laying on a swimming pool deck and seen that thing overhead. I don't know what kind of vehicle that was. It was definitely mechanical and big. I mean, humongous. I'm talking about something maybe a quarter of a mile in diameter, or it wasn't round, it was rectangular.
And in terms of the night of the when you're in the pool and then the night with Bandit, those are two different nights, right?
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell me about the night with Bandit going missing? Can you tell me what do you think happened that night? Have you come to a conclusion of what you think?
Oh, I come to the conclusion a week after it happened that there was a space vehicle landed. I don't think we had anything near as far advanced. A space vehicle landed, and I think they took the dog. The Roswell thing went on right around that time.
47, yeah, only 30.
It was before then. It was when I was in service. I was in the Air Force in 47 to 50. And, of course, at that time when that Roswell thing went on, I was in the Air Force. You never heard about it because it didn't have the blanket coverage like they have now. But I've never heard of it or anything. But I watch some of these documentaries now about that, and make you wonder. Who knows?
There's a lot of similar characteristics.
But I'm broad-minded. I can think of a lot of things it could be. The big rectangular mechanical thing that we've seen over top of the swimming pool, as far as I'm concerned, switched in from another dimension. I believe in that stuff. I believe there are side-by-side parallel dimensions. Whether it be parallel Earths or what it be. But at one of these days, when they get into deep space far enough, they're going to be able to find the answers to that stuff. I don't believe in heaven and hell. I don't believe in devils and gods. I don't believe in anything like that. I believe in me, and my family, and the good guys, and the hell with the bad guys. That's the way I feel about it.
Nice. Let me see. I think I only have a few more questions for you.
I've had a lot of preachers come to my house and say, well, Mr. Partridge, don't you thank God for your children? I said, no, I don't thank God for my children. I made them. He didn't. Well, people have a hard time understanding where I'm coming from when I talk like that, but I talk what I feel.
That's the way you got to do it,
I don't disguise anything.
You tell me 2 days after your sighting at the night at the barn with the red lights, just 2 days after that, it was reported that these 4 kids had saw a flying creature, and they also saw a dead dog on Route 62. Do you remember hearing about that? And when you did you make a connection?
I remember hearing about it.
But you do remember the state trooper, right? Can you just tell me about when you heard about the state trooper seeing the bird and the dog that you made the connection to your...
It was either the first day after this happened or the second day after it happened. It was on television. It was on news.
Can you tell me what you remember seeing and making the connection between the two?
Just all it said was, they, of course, had about the Point Pleasant Bridge collapse and that. But then they told about this Mothman creature people had seen and this and that. I didn't pay that much attention to it, though. To tell you the truth, I didn't really tie it together with anything that happened at my place because I didn't see any Mothman or I didn't have any bridges fall down. Common sense would tell you the bridge collapse was not tied in with the Mothman prophecies or whatever because that bridge was doomed to fall for the last 10 years from the reports I've read.
Can you tell me a bit about that? What have you read?
Oh, about the bridge. It was bad condition, cracks and rust and age.
Have you heard of anything about there's that whole thing called the cornstalk curse? Have you heard about that at all?
I heard that down at the festival. I heard cornstalk, but I have no idea what they're talking about.
Okay.
Was it an Indian or something like that?
Yeah, it's an Indian that was killed there a long time ago. A lot of people blame everything bad that happens on that.
Lord. There's a lot of Indians killed too. I hope that ain't true.
Yeah, there's a lot of curses going around there. Do you remember? Can you remember back living in this area during those times? I talked to a newspaper reporter last night who was kind of a reporter in West Virginia during '66 and '67, and he was talking to me a bit about that. You know, there were hundreds and hundreds of people reporting kind of similar things that you saw, strange lights in the skies. You know, so you weren't kind of the only one. You know, there was a lot of people seeing things. Do you remember that commotion going on a little bit? Can you tell me about, you know, did you hear about other people reporting similar things?
Oh, I know. I heard a few of the stories, but I couldn't tell you which ones I paid any attention to. Or
That's fine. I don't need specifics, but I'm just trying to get, if you can remember, just what I'm trying to establish is that you didn't feel like you were the only one who saw this. So can you just tell me, do you remember hearing other stories similar to yours?
Well, I had some bad experiences after this. Now, this wasn't during that period, but this was a couple of years later. I was a long distance truck driver. You know, I had trucks I run all over the country with, and I had some what you might call ghostly experiences with that.
Riding, you know, working your trucks.
Whether it be involved with that, I wouldn't know. But I know it made a sky watcher out of you for a while. I'd go out there at night sometimes, look for an hour or two at the sky, see if I could see anything out of place. I never did.
So you said you did remember some of the people talking about seeing similar things like UFOs and things like that, but you don't remember the specifics of those stories. That's fine. Can you just tell me just those basic things, like, you know, do you remember living here during that time that other people had saw similar things? What were people seeing? You don't have to tell me specifics, but just, you know, just lights, you know.
The only thing that really sticks in my mind is about a salesman somewhere that was coming home on some route or somewhere from sales convention or something, where this thing landed either beside his car or in front of his car and stopped him, or his car shut off or something. And I thought, well, I guess I'm not the only nutty one. But that's about all I can remember.
Okay. Just a couple more questions and we're done. Many people connected both the Mothman and a lot of these UFOs, kind of like the one you saw. You know, a lot of people connected the Mothman and the UFOs together as if they were kind of part of the same thing. They thought that they had something to do with one another. Can you tell me about that? Do you think there's any connection?
No, I do not think there's any connection between the Mothman and UFOs. Start with, if you were an advanced civilization of aliens, if you couldn't make anything better appearing than that Mothman, you'd keep your fingers out of the dough. I had some experience with a truck I wanted to tell you about.
Sure, tell me about that.
I pulled off on the Pennsylvania Turnpike one night and went to sleep. I was dead tired. Woke up next morning. Get a little mixed up here. Something woke me up in the morning early, about 4 o'clock in the morning, or 5, and it was like the whole truck was full of cobwebs. And I just couldn't get them off, and I just raked and everything. Boy, I must really be tired. And like the cab was filled with smoke, but there wasn't any smoke. So I got awake by then and got out and relieved myself and decided to go on. And I was going to Philadelphia. And before I got in there, I stopped hearing on the radio, CB radio, about a trucker got shot to death on the Pennsylvania Turnpike last night. And told me what mile marker it was, and that's right where I slept. And it would happen an hour or so after I'd left there. So what conclusion can I draw? Was there some angel looking over my shoulder? There must have been something to wake me up and get me out of there.
That's really weird.
I had another incident happen. I took a load up into Canada, New Brunswick, and as I was coming to this bridge, there was a stop sign there, a stoplight, and a girl was coming towards me, and a van was under the stoplight waiting for it to change. And I started slowing down, and just before I got to the stoplight, why, this girl hit that van in the back and popped out in front of me, and I run over the car and killed her. And the other girl was with her, crippled her up for life, I guess. Okay, I had a hard time getting over that, but I finally did. I figured, well, like the Mountie said, it wasn't your fault. There's nothing you could have done about it. So, okay. About a year after that, I'm going up this same place. And I don't know why I done it, but I took the alternate route, which runs parallel to the route where this has happened with the girl. And over on this alternate route, and when I got approximately across from where that had happened, within a mile or so, all at once my truck just lit up in a blue glow. Every bulb in it burned out. My radios burned out. My headlights, I didn't have a light lit. I didn't have any juice at all in the whole truck. So what the heck? I just might as well sit here alongside the road till daylight. So I went to sleep, woke up the next morning, got to looking. Batteries were blowed wide open, split, like you took an axe and chopped them. Every bulb in the truck was blowed out. My radios were burned out. My radar detector, everything. Cost me $500 to replace batteries and bulbs and everything and get it going again. And nobody could ever give me an answer to how that could have happened.
It's really bizarre.
But I have to tie it together myself.
It's bizarre. Is this your wife here?
I don't know what color is the car.
Gold?
Yep.
She gonna run us over as soon as she sees it.
She might.
Well, I only have
What I have to do, move my chair out of the way.
I only have like one question for you left. So real quick, I got two questions left for you. A lot of other people who saw similar things that what you saw later complained that they were like approached by people at their residences later who had kind of harassed and bothered them, more so like government people. Can you tell me about that? And did that happen to you or no?
No, I never had anybody around after the second or third day after it happened.
Okay, so can you tell me that in like a complete sentence that, after I saw this thing, other people have reported that, similar people that reported things were approached by, government officials. No one had ever come to my place.
Yeah, after this happened, several people, I guess, reported that they had been bothered by government officials and other people or investigators or what have you, come around bothering them. None of that happened to me. I did not have a problem like that.
That's good. Okay. What you saw was kind of bizarre and weird and probably, it hasn't been explained. And a lot of people that have saw things in Point Pleasant to this day still don't know what happened there, in terms of everything, the UFOs, the Mothman, all that stuff. Do you, are you still kind of hoping, like wondering, like, would it be nice to kind of finally have an answer to all this weird stuff? And do you think the people of Point Pleasant are kind of feel the same way, that they kind of want answers to these things after all this time? Would it be nice?
I would like to have the answers to some of this stuff that happened. I think we'll all get our answers one of these days. But I think it's very real. Too many people seem to make up all this stuff.
Okay, I think we're good.
Like Gray Barker told me when he interviewed me the first time, he said, I'm going to lay notes out here for you, and the notes read right down exactly the same thing that we had.
Yeah. Is there anything that I didn't ask you or that I didn't cover that you think is important regarding your story that you want to tell me?
That's about all.
Okay.
It's been so long.
Yeah.
Nothing's happened since then.
All right. Well, that's good. I think we're good to go. Thanks a lot. You did a really good job.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Eyes of the Mothman, the podcast. For more information about our program, or to find out where you can watch the original documentary film or purchase a limited edition signed DVD copy, please visit www.eyesofthemothman.com.